Standing in the parking lot of St. Catherine's Cathedral, I watched my son's wedding guests file through the ornate doors like ants marching toward honey. Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas lined the circular drive, not a single pickup truck or modest sedan in sight. 43 years I'd raised that boy, and here I was, uninvited to his wedding, clutching a manila envelope that would change everything. The morning had started like any other. I'd been nursing my coffee on the porch when Mrs. Henderson from next door came rushing over, her face flushed with that particular look women get when they're about to deliver devastating news disguised as helpfulness. "Frank, honey, I saw the wedding announcement in the society pages," she'd said, wringing her hands. "Your Michael's marrying that Wellington girl today." The Wellington girl, Victoria Wellington, daughter of Richard Wellington, the real estate mogul who owned half the commercial district downtown. I'd heard about her through the grapevine. Princeton-educated, trust fund baby, the kind of woman who'd never set foot in a place like Tony's Diner where Michael and I used to share pancakes every Saturday morning. "I know about the wedding, Mrs. Henderson," I lied, "because admitting your own son hadn't bothered to invite you to the most important day of his life felt like swallowing glass." But I hadn't known. 3 months since Michael last called, 6 months since he'd visited. The distance between us had grown like a cancer, starting small after he'd graduated from business school and taken that job at Wellington Properties. Suddenly, our weekly dinners became monthly phone calls, which became holiday texts, which became nothing at all. I'd tried reaching out, left voicemails that went unreturned, sent Christmas cards that weren't acknowledged, even drove to his fancy downtown apartment once, only to have the doorman tell me Mr. Patterson, he'd started using his mother's maiden name instead of mine, wasn't accepting visitors. My own son treating me like some kind of vagrant. The envelope in my hands contained 20 years of secrets, documents I'd hoped never to use. But watching those wedding guests, people who'd known Michael for maybe 2 years, celebrate while his father stood excluded in a parking lot, I realized some truths couldn't stay buried forever. I'd worn my best suit, the navy blue one Sarah had bought me for our 20th anniversary. She'd been gone 8 years now, and I still missed her voice in moments like this. She would have known what to say, how to bridge the gap between Michael and me. But Sarah was gone, and I was here alone, about to crash my son's wedding with revelations that would shake the very foundation of his new life. The church bells chimed, announcing the ceremony's start. Through the stained glass windows, I could see shadows moving, guests taking their seats, the wedding party assembling. Michael would be up there soon, promising to love and honor Victoria Wellington until death do them part, just like Ed promised his mother all those years ago. But some promises get tested in ways you never expect. I tucked the envelope inside my jacket and walked toward the cathedral doors. The security guard, because of course they had security, looked me up and down with professional skepticism. "Excuse me, sir, are you on the guest list?" "I'm the groom's father," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. He consulted his clipboard, frowning. "I don't see a Frank Patterson here." "Try Frank Mitchell," I said, using Sarah's maiden name. "Sometimes there are mix-ups with the invitations." Another frown, another scan of the list. "Sir, I'm going to have to—" "Check with the bride's family," I interrupted. "Richard Wellington knows me. We have business to discuss." That wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Wellington and I had history, though Michael didn't know it. Nobody knew it, except the two of us, and that secret had been eating at me for 20 years. The guard spoke into his radio, got a response, and stepped aside. "Go ahead, sir, but please keep it quiet. The ceremony's about to begin." I slipped through the doors and into the back of the cathedral. The sanctuary was magnificent. Soaring ceilings, elaborate flower arrangements, probably cost more than I'd made in the past 5 years. Michael stood at the altar in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly rent, his back straight, his hair perfectly styled. He looked successful, happy, Everything a father should want for his son. But he also looked like a stranger. The organ began playing, and Victoria appeared at the back of the aisle. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Tall, elegant, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. Her dress probably cost more than my car, and she wore it like she was born to it. Michael's face lit up when he saw her, and for a moment I remember the little boy who used to run to me when I came home from work, who'd help me fix the truck on weekends, who'd sit on my lap while I read him bedtime stories. But that little boy was gone, replaced by this polished stranger who'd chosen wealth over family, prestige over loyalty. The ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance money could buy. I watched from the back, unnoticed, as my son pledged his life to a woman whose family had more secrets than the CIA. Victoria's father, Richard Wellington, sat in the front row, his silver hair gleaming, his expensive suit impeccable. He had no idea I was here. No idea that the envelope in my jacket contained proof of crimes that would destroy his empire and his daughter's perfect new life. But he was about to find out. As the minister asked if anyone had reason why these two should not be wed, I felt the weight of 20 years of silence pressing down on me. I could stay quiet, let Michael have his fairy tale wedding, let him live in ignorance of what kind of family he was marrying into. Or I could stand up and tell the truth. The minister paused, waiting for objections that would never come. Michael and Victoria smiled at each other, lost in their perfect moment. And I made my choice. I didn't stand up, not yet. The moment passed, and the minister continued with the ceremony. But my decision was made. I would speak, just not in the way everyone expected. As the newlyweds kissed and the congregation erupted in applause, I slipped out through a side door. The reception was being held in the Wellington mansion, and I knew from the society pages that it would be a grand affair. More importantly, I knew it would be where Richard Wellington would be relaxed, confident, surrounded by his wealth and power. It would be the perfect place to destroy him. The drive to the Wellington estate gave me time to think about how I'd gotten here. 20 years ago, I was a different man, younger, angrier, more desperate. Michael was just 3 years old, and Sarah had been diagnosed with cancer. The treatments were expensive, and my construction job barely covered our basic expenses, let alone the mounting medical bills. That's when I'd met Richard Wellington. He'd been smaller then, just starting to build his real estate empire. He'd hired my crew to renovate a warehouse he'd bought cheap, planning to flip it for condos. The work was supposed to take 3 months. Instead, it took 6, because Wellington kept changing the specifications, demanding corners be cut, safety regulations be ignored. I should have walked away, should have reported him to the city inspectors. But Sarah needed those treatments, and Wellington was paying double the going rate for our silence. The warehouse fire happened on a Tuesday. I still remember the date, October 15, 2004. The electrical work Wellington had insisted we do without permits, the substandard materials he'd forced us to use, the safety violations we'd ignored. It all came together in a perfect storm of negligence and greed. 3 people died in that fire. A homeless man who'd been sleeping in the alley, a security guard making his rounds, and a teenage girl who'd been taking a shortcut home from school. Wellington's insurance company paid out millions. The investigation found evidence of arson, a convenient scapegoat that shifted blame away from the building's owner. Wellington used the insurance money to buy more properties, expand his empire, build the fortune that would eventually make his daughter one of the most eligible bachelorettes in the state. I'd kept quiet for 20 years, kept the documents, the photos, the evidence of what really happened. Partly because I was complicit, partly because I was afraid, and partly because exposing Wellington wouldn't bring those 3 people back. But watching my son choose Wellington's money over his own father changed something in me. The man who'd built his fortune on the graves of innocent people didn't deserve to see his daughter's happiness, didn't deserve to walk her down the aisle, didn't deserve to play the role of proud father while treating me like I didn't exist. The Wellington Mansion sat on 50 acres of manicured grounds, a monument to wealth and power. Valets parked cars while guests in designer clothes made their way to the reception. I waited until the party was in full swing before approaching the service entrance. "I need to speak with Mr. Wellington," I told the catering manager. "It's about the Patterson account." The mention of business got me through the door. I made my way through the service corridors, past busy kitchen staff and hurried servers, until I found myself in the main reception hall. The room was magnificent: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, ice sculptures, and enough flowers to stock a greenhouse. Michael and Victoria sat at the head table, looking like royalty holding court. Michael was laughing at something one of his groomsmen had said, his face flushed with champagne and happiness. When was the last time I'd seen him laugh like that? When was the last time we'd shared a moment of genuine joy? I couldn't remember. Richard Wellington stood near the bar, surrounded by a group of men in expensive suits. Even from across the room, I could see the satisfaction in his posture, the way he held himself like a man who'd achieved everything he'd ever wanted. His daughter was married to a promising young man. His business was thriving. His secrets were safe. I walked across the room, the envelope in my jacket feeling heavier with each step. Conversation stopped as I passed. I was clearly out of place in my off-the-rack suit, clearly not part of this world of inherited wealth and social connections. "Excuse me, Mr. Wellington," I said, approaching the group. "I need to speak with you privately." Wellington turned, his eyes narrowing as he took in my appearance. "Am sorry, do we know each other?" "We met 20 years ago, the warehouse project on 5th Street." The color drained from his face. The men around him continued their conversations, oblivious to the tension that had suddenly filled the air between us. "I'm sorry, I don't recall," Wellington said, but his voice betrayed him. He remembered. He remembered everything. "Perhaps we could step outside," I suggested. "I have something that might refresh your memory." Wellington excused himself from the group, and we walked out onto the mansion's terrace. The evening air was cool, and the sounds of the party faded behind us. Below us, the reception continued in blissful ignorance of what was about to unfold. "What do you want?" Wellington asked, his composure cracking. I pulled out the envelope and removed a photograph. The warehouse before the fire, showing the electrical work we'd installed without permits. "I want to give you a wedding gift." His hands shook as he took the photograph. "Where did you get this?" "I've had it for 20 years, along with the invoices for the substandard materials, the photographs of the safety violations, and the recorded conversations where you told me to cut corners. I pulled out more documents. I've been very thorough." Wellington's face went ashen. "What do you want? Money? I can pay you." "I don't want your money," I said. "I want my son back." "Your son?" "Michael Patterson, the groom, my son, who you've turned against me, who's so blinded by your wealth that he's forgotten his own father exists." Wellington stared at me, the pieces clicking together. "You're Frank Patterson, Michael's father. The same Frank Patterson who kept your secrets for 20 years while you built your empire on the graves of innocent people." The silence stretched between us, broken only by the distant sound of music and laughter from the reception. Wellington aged a decade in those few seconds, his confidence crumbling as the weight of his past sins settled on his shoulders. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. I took back the photograph and documents, returning them to the envelope. "I want you to tell Michael the truth. Tell him who his father really is and who you really are. Tell him that the man he's been idolizing is a criminal, and the man he's been ignoring is the only one who's ever truly loved him. He'll never believe you. He thinks you're just a bitter old man who can't accept his success. Then you'll have to convince him, I said, because if you don't, these documents go to the district attorney tomorrow morning. 20 years is a long time, but there's no statute of limitations on murder. Wellington's face went white. It wasn't murder, it was an accident. An accident caused by your negligence, your greed, your complete disregard for human life. You killed 3 people, Wellington, 3 people, so you could save a few $1,000s on proper electrical work. He was shaking now, the powerful real estate mogul reduced to a frightened old man facing the consequences of his choices. My daughter, this will destroy her. Your daughter married into a family built on lies and death. Maybe it's time she learned the truth. The sound of footsteps on the terrace made us both turn. Michael was walking toward us, his face flushed with champagne and confusion. "Dad? What are you doing here?" The word Dad hit me like a physical blow. It was the first time he'd called me that in months, and it came out automatically, without the coldness that had characterized our recent interactions. "Michael," I said, my voice catching, "I came to see you get married." "You weren't invited." "I know, but you're my son, and I wasn't going to miss the most important day of your life." He looked between Wellington and me, sensing the tension. "What's going on here?" Wellington and I locked eyes. This was it. He could expose everything, destroy his own reputation to save his relationship with his new son-in-law, or he could try to maintain his facade and hope I was bluffing. "Your father," Wellington said slowly, "was just congratulating me on the wedding." I felt a flash of anger. Even now, even faced with evidence of his crimes, he was choosing to lie. "Actually," I said, "I was just telling Mr. Wellington about some old business we had together, business that might interest you, Michael." Michael looked confused, but before he could respond, Victoria appeared on the terrace. "Richard, everyone's looking for you. It's time for the father-daughter dance." She smiled at me politely, not recognizing me as the uninvited guest. "I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met." "This is Michael's father," Wellington said, his voice barely audible. Victoria's smile faltered. "Oh, I thought... Michael said you couldn't make it." "Plans change," I said, pulling the envelope from my jacket, "and I brought a wedding gift." Michael's face went through a series of emotions, confusion, embarrassment, and something that might have been fear. "Dad, this isn't the time or place for whatever you're trying to do." "When would be the right time, Michael? When would be the right time to have a conversation with my son? Because I've been waiting for months." Victoria looked between us, clearly sensing the family drama unfolding. "Maybe we should go back inside," she suggested. "We can discuss this later." "No," I said, my voice firmer than I'd intended. "We're going to discuss this now. I've been patient long enough." Wellington stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "Frank, please, this is my daughter's wedding day." "Your daughter's wedding day," I repeated, pulling out the envelope, "built on the fortune you made from the deaths of 3 innocent people." Victoria gasped. "What is he talking about?" Michael stepped between us, his face flushed with anger. "Dad, what the hell are you doing? You show up uninvited? You're clearly drunk." "I'm not drunk, Michael. I'm just tired of being treated like I don't exist while you worship at the altar of blood money." "Blood money?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Wellington grabbed my arm. "Please, Frank, don't do this. Not here, not now." But 20 years of silence had reached its breaking point. I pulled out the first document, the original invoice for the electrical work on the warehouse, October 2004. Your father-in-law hired my construction crew to renovate a warehouse on 5th Street. He demanded we use substandard materials, ignore safety regulations, and install electrical work without permits. Michael stared at the document, his face confused. What does this have to do with anything? 3 people died when that warehouse burned down, Michael. 3 people died because your father-in-law prioritized profit over human life. That's not true, Wellington said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's all true, and I have the evidence to prove it. I pulled out photographs showing the substandard electrical work, the safety violations, the corners we'd cut at Wellington's insistence. I've carried this guilt for 20 years, keeping quiet because I was afraid, because I was complicit, because I needed the money for your mother's cancer treatments. The mention of Sarah hit Michael like a physical blow. For a moment, the anger in his eyes was replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "You never told me you were struggling financially during Mom's illness," he said quietly. "Because I didn't want you to carry that burden. You were just a kid. But I made choices, Michael, choices I'm not proud of, choices that helped build the fortune that's now funding your new life." Victoria was staring at her father, her face white with shock. "Dad, is this true?" Wellington's silence was answer enough. "Those people who died," I continued, "they had families. The security guard had a wife and 2 kids. The homeless man had a sister who spent months looking for him. The teenage girl was someone's daughter, someone's hope for the future." "Stop," Victoria whispered. "Please stop." But I couldn't stop. 20 years of silence had created a dam, and now that dam was breaking. I kept quiet because I was afraid, because I was ashamed, because I thought protecting my family was more important than seeking justice for theirs. But watching my son choose this man's money over his own father's love, I can't stay quiet anymore. Michael was staring at the documents, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. "You're telling me you were involved in something that killed 3 people? I was involved in cutting corners that led to their deaths, yes. But I didn't make the decisions. I didn't demand that safety regulations be ignored. I didn't choose profit over human life. But you went along with it." The accusation hit home because it was true. Yes, I went along with it. Because your mother was dying and I needed the money for her treatments. Because I was desperate and scared and making choices I'm not proud of. Wellington finally found his voice. "Frank, please, this was 20 years ago. We can't change what happened." "No, we can't change what happened, but we can acknowledge it. We can tell the truth. We can stop pretending that your fortune is clean, that your success is legitimate, that you deserve the respect and admiration you've received." Victoria was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Michael, I think we should go inside." But Michael wasn't moving. He was staring at his father, really looking at him for the first time in months. "Is this why you've been trying to contact me? To tell me this?" "I've been trying to contact you because you're my son, and I miss you. This," I gestured to the documents, "is what I was afraid to tell you. The real reason I've been keeping my distance." "You've been keeping your distance? You think I'm the one who's been distant?" The hurt in his voice surprised me. "Michael, you stopped calling. You stopped visiting. You made it clear that your new life didn't have room for your old father. I stopped calling because every conversation became a lecture about how I was changing, how I was becoming someone you didn't recognize. I stopped visiting because you made it clear you disapproved of my choices, my career, my relationship with Victoria." We stared at each other across the terrace, 20 years of misunderstanding and hurt feelings laying bare between us. Victoria was still crying, Wellington was still pale and shaken, and the sounds of the wedding reception continued in the background, oblivious to the family drama unfolding outside. I never disapproved of you, I said quietly. I was afraid of losing you, and in trying to hold on too tight, I pushed you away. You didn't push me away, Dad. You made me choose between the family I was born into and the family I was trying to build. And when I chose Victoria, you made me feel like I was betraying everything you'd taught me about loyalty and family. Because I was jealous, I admitted. Jealous of her money, her education, her ability to give you things I never could. I was afraid you'd realize you didn't need me anymore. Michael's face softened slightly. I've always needed you, Dad. I just didn't know how to balance that need with the life I was trying to build. Wellington cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this inside, away from the other guests. No, I said firmly. We're going to finish this conversation here and now, because I'm tired of secrets, tired of shame, tired of letting the past control the present. I pulled out the final document, a letter I'd written but never sent, addressed to the families of the victims. I wrote this 10 years ago, trying to find the words to apologize for my role in their deaths. I never sent it because I was too afraid, too ashamed, too worried about protecting my own family. Victoria read over my shoulder, her tears falling on the paper. You were going to confess? I was going to try to make amends, somehow, but I convinced myself that it would do more harm than good, that it would destroy lives without bringing anyone back. And now? Michael asked. Now I realize that some truths are too important to keep buried, and that my relationship with my son is too important to sacrifice for someone else's secrets. Wellington stepped forward, his face resigned. What do you want from me, Frank? I want you to tell the truth. I want you to acknowledge what happened, what your choices cost. I want you to stop pretending that your success is legitimate. And if I do that, if I confess, what happens to Victoria? What happens to Michael? What happens to all the employees who depend on Wellington Properties for their livelihood? It was a fair question, and one I'd wrestled with for 20 years. That's not for me to decide. That's for the courts, for the families of the victims, for the community that trusted you to build safely and responsibly. Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he'd learned. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but sad. Dad, I need to understand something. Are you doing this to seek justice for those people, or are you doing this to get back at me for choosing Victoria? The question cut deep because it forced me to examine my own motivations. Both, I think. I want justice for those people, but I also want my son back. And I couldn't figure out how to get one without the other. So you're using the deaths of 3 people to manipulate me into choosing you over Victoria? I'm using the truth to show you who you're really aligning yourself with. The money that's funding your new life, the respect you have for your father-in-law, the empire you're hoping to inherit, it's all built on a foundation of lies and death. Victoria looked at her father, then at Michael, then at me. What do you want us to do? I looked at my son, at the man he'd become, at the choice he was facing. I want you to choose truth over comfort, justice over convenience, family over fortune. But I can't make that choice for you, Michael. You have to decide what kind of man you want to be. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 20 years of secrets and hurt. In the distance, the wedding reception continued, unaware that the foundation of the celebration was crumbling on the terrace outside. Michael looked at Victoria, then at Wellington, then at me. I need time to think about this. Time is something those 3 people don't have, I said. Time is something their families have been waiting for 20 years. And time is something I need to figure out how to move forward from here. I nodded, understanding. I'll wait, Michael, but I won't wait forever, and I won't keep these secrets much longer. Michael walked to the edge of the terrace, staring out at the manicured gardens below.
The weight of what he'd learned was visible in his posture, the way his shoulders sagged, the way his hands gripped the stone railing. Victoria stood beside him, her wedding dress a stark white against the darkening sky. 20 years, Michael said finally, his voice barely audible. 20 years you've been carrying this secret. 20 years I've been living with the guilt, I corrected. There's a difference. Wellington had aged a decade in the past hour. He sat heavily in one of the wrought iron chairs, his face buried in his hands. I never meant for anyone to die, he said. I just wanted to maximize profits, minimize costs. It was just business. Just business? Victoria's voice was sharp, cutting through the evening air. 3 people died, and you call it just business? Victoria, you don't understand the pressure I was under. I understand perfectly, she interrupted. You were greedy. You cut corners. People died because of your choices. Michael turned from the railing, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Dad, I need to know something.
When you took that job, when you went along with cutting corners, did you know people might die? The question I'd been dreading for 20 years. I knew it was dangerous. I knew we were taking risks. But I told myself that nothing would happen, that we'd get away with it, that the money was worth the risk. So you gambled with people's lives? Yes, I gambled with people's lives, and I lost. And 3 innocent people paid the price for my desperation. Victoria was pacing now, her wedding dress rustling against the stone. How do we live with this? How do we move forward, knowing that our happiness is built on other people's tragedy? We don't, I said simply. We make it right. We tell the truth. We face the consequences. Easy for you to say, Wellington snapped, some of his old arrogance returning. You don't have a business to run, employees to protect, a reputation to maintain. I have a son to protect, I replied, and I failed at that 20 years ago when I chose your money over his moral foundation. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You know what's ironic? All these years, I thought you were jealous of my success. I thought you couldn't handle the fact that I'd risen above my blue-collar roots, that I'd made something of myself in the business world. You did make something of yourself, Michael. You became successful, educated, respected. I became complicit, he interrupted. I took a job with a man who built his fortune on the graves of innocent people. I married his daughter. I became part of his empire. You didn't know, Victoria said quietly. We didn't know. But we should have asked questions. We should have wondered how someone builds a fortune that fast, that completely. We should have been more careful about who we trusted. Wellington stood up, his face hardening. I won't let you destroy everything I've built. I won't let you ruin my daughter's life over something that happened 20 years ago. You've already ruined her life, I said. You've made her an accessory to murder, whether she knows it or not. It wasn't murder. 3 people are dead because of your choices. Call it what you want, but those people are still dead. The tension on the terrace was palpable. Wellington was cornered, desperate, and I could see him weighing his options. Michael was struggling with the revelation that his new life was built on a foundation of lies. Victoria was realizing that her fairy tale wedding had become a nightmare. What do you want? Wellington asked again. What will it take to make this go away? It won't go away, I said. The truth doesn't just disappear because it's inconvenient. Everything has a price, Frank. Name yours. You still don't get it, do you? You still think this is about money, about deals, about transactions. This is about justice. This is about 3 people who died because you were too greedy to do the right thing. Michael stepped between us. Stop, both of you. Just stop.
He looked at me, then at Wellington. "This isn't about you two anymore. This is about Victoria and me, about our future, about what we do with this information." "What do you want to do?" I asked. Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I want to know everything. I want to see all the documents, all the evidence. I want to understand exactly what happened, who was responsible, and what the consequences should be." "Michael, no," Wellington said. "The less you know, the better." "The less I know, the more complicit I become. I'm already married to your daughter. I'm already part of your organization. I'm already benefiting from blood money. The only question is whether I'm going to do something about it." Victoria looked at her new husband with a mixture of pride and fear. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to make this right. However we can, whatever it costs, we need to make this right." Wellington's face went white. "You don't understand what you're saying. If this comes out, it won't just destroy me. It will destroy the company, the employees, the investors. It will destroy you, Victoria. Your trust fund, your inheritance, your future, it will all be gone." "Then we'll build a new future," Michael said firmly, "one that's not built on lies and death." I felt a surge of pride in my son. Despite everything, despite the years of distance and misunderstanding, he was still the boy I'd raised to do the right thing. "Michael," I said quietly, "you don't have to do this. You don't have to sacrifice your future for the past." "Yes, I do," he replied, "because if I don't, I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror again. I'll never be able to sleep at night knowing that my success came at the cost of 3 innocent lives." Victoria was crying again, but this time the tears seemed different. Not tears of shock or fear, but tears of resolution. "He's right," she said. "We can't build a marriage on this foundation. We can't start our life together knowing that our happiness is built on other people's tragedy." Wellington was desperate now, his composure completely shattered. "Victoria, please, think about what you're saying. Think about everything you'll lose." "I'm thinking about what I'll gain," she replied. "I'm thinking about being able to live with myself, being able to face my husband every morning without shame, being able to build something real and honest and good." "You're being naive," Wellington said. "The world doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to make compromises. Sometimes you have to accept that perfection isn't possible." "And sometimes," I said, "you have to choose between what's easy and what's right." Michael looked at the envelope in my hands. "What's the next step, Dad?" The word "Dad" hit me again, but this time it carried none of the coldness or distance of recent months. This time it carried respect, trust, and something that might have been forgiveness. "The next step is we go to the district attorney. We tell them everything. We turn over all the evidence and let justice take its course."
And then? And then we face the consequences, all of us, together. Wellington stood up, his face hard with determination. "I won't let you destroy my family." "Your family destroyed itself the moment you chose greed over human life," I replied. "I'll fight you. I'll hire the best lawyers. I'll discredit your evidence. I'll make sure you lose everything." "I've already lost everything that matters," I said. "I lost my son's respect, my wife's trust, my own sense of integrity. The only thing I have left is the chance to do the right thing." Michael stepped forward, his face set with resolve. "You won't fight us alone, Dad. We'll face this together." "Michael, no," Wellington pleaded. "You don't understand what you're giving up." "I understand perfectly," Michael replied. "I'm giving up blood money for a chance at redemption. I'm giving up a fortune built on lies for a relationship built on truth." Victoria took Michael's hand. "I'm with you," she said quietly. "Whatever comes next, I'm with you." Wellington looked at his daughter, his face a mask of betrayal and fear. "You're throwing away everything I've worked for." "You threw it away 20 years ago when you chose profit over human life," she replied. "We're just refusing to live with the consequences of your choices." The sound of music from the reception drifted across the terrace, a stark contrast to the heavy conversation taking place outside. Inside, the wedding guests were dancing, celebrating what they believed was the perfect union of two successful families. They had no idea that everything was about to change. Wellington's composure finally cracked completely. "You want to know the truth? Fine, I'll tell you the truth." His voice was shaking with rage and desperation. "Yes, I cut corners. Yes, I ignored safety regulations. But I wasn't the only one. Frank here took my money, did the work, and kept his mouth shut for 20 years. He's just as guilty as I am." "You're right," I said, surprising everyone, including myself. "I am just as guilty. I made choices that cost 3 people their lives. I prioritized my family's needs over the safety of strangers. I've carried that guilt for 20 years, and it's destroyed me from the inside out." Michael looked at me with something that might have been respect. "That's why you've been distant. That's why you've been pushing me away. I was afraid that if you got too close, you'd see what I really was. A man who compromised his values for money. A man who let people die because he was too desperate to walk away from a dangerous job." "But you're here now," Victoria said quietly. "You're telling the truth now." 20 years too late," I replied. "But yes, I'm telling the truth now." Wellington was pacing now, his expensive shoes clicking against the stone terrace. "Do you have any idea what will happen if this comes out? The lawsuits, the criminal charges, the media attention? It won't just destroy me, it will destroy everyone connected to me." "Including Michael and Victoria," I said. "I know." "Then why are you doing this?" I looked at my son, at the man he'd become, at the choice he was facing. "Because some things are more important than comfort or security or even family. Because those 3 people deserve justice, even if it comes 20 years late." Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the district attorney's office." "Michael, wait," Wellington said, grabbing his arm. "Let's think about this. Let's figure out a way to make amends without destroying everything." "What kind of amends?" Victoria asked. "Money, compensation for the families, anonymous donations, charitable foundations in the victims' names. We can do good without admitting guilt." "Blood money," I said. "You want to pay off the families with the same money you made from their loved ones' deaths?" "I want to help them. I want to ease their suffering." "You want to buy their silence," Michael corrected. "You want to pay for your peace of mind without facing the consequences of your actions." Wellington's face hardened. "And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with finding a solution that helps everyone without destroying lives?" "Because it's not justice," Victoria said. "Because it doesn't acknowledge what really happened. Because it doesn't hold anyone accountable." "Accountability is a luxury we can't afford," Wellington snapped. "Do you think those families care about accountability, or do you think they care about being financially secure?" "That's not our choice to make," Michael said firmly. "That's their choice. And they can't make an informed choice without knowing the truth." He started dialing, but Wellington grabbed the phone from his hands. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built." "Give me the phone," Richard said, his voice dangerously quiet. "No, I won't let you ruin your wife's life over something that happened before she was even born." "Richard, give him the phone," Victoria said.
Victoria, please, think about this rationally. Think about what you're giving up. I'm thinking about what I'm gaining, she replied. Self-respect, integrity, the ability to look my husband in the eye without shame. Wellington looked around the terrace, desperate, cornered. Frank, please, I'll do anything. I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll give you a job, a house, anything. Just don't do this. I don't want your money, I said. I want justice for those 3 people. I want my son to know who's really married into. I want the truth to finally come out. The truth will destroy innocent people. The lies have already destroyed innocent people, Michael said. 3 people are dead because of those lies. How many more people have to suffer before we stop protecting your reputation? Wellington was breathing heavily now, his face red with exertion and fear. You don't understand. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I have connections, power, influence. I can make this go away, but I can also make your lives very difficult. Are you threatening us? I asked. I'm stating facts.
I've built relationships with judges, prosecutors, politicians. I've made donations, provided favors, created obligations. If you try to destroy me, I'll take you down with me. Michael stepped forward, his face hard with determination. Then we'll go down together, but we'll go down telling the truth. The standoff continued for several tense moments. Wellington was desperate, Michael was resolved, Victoria was conflicted, and I was tired. Tired of carrying secrets, tired of living with guilt, tired of watching my relationship with my son deteriorate because of choices I'd made 20 years ago. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. I need to tell the guests something. They're probably wondering where we are. Tell them the reception is over, Michael said. Tell them there's been a family emergency. Michael, you can't just end your own wedding reception, she protested. I can't continue celebrating when I know what I know now. I can't dance and smile and accept congratulations, knowing that this whole thing is built on a foundation of lies and death. Wellington made one last desperate attempt. What if I confess? What if I take full responsibility, clear Frank's name, and face the consequences alone? I looked at him with surprise. You'd do that? If it means protecting Victoria and Michael, yes. I'll confess to everything. I'll say I forced you to do the work, that you had no choice, that you were just following orders. But that's not true, I said. I made my own choices. I'm responsible for my own actions. But you're also a victim, Victoria said quietly. You were in an impossible situation. Your wife was dying. You needed money for her treatment, and Richard took advantage of your desperation. Michael nodded. She's right, Dad. You were coerced. You were put in a position where you had to choose between your wife's life and your moral principles. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, but it explains it, Michael said, and it makes Richard the primary villain in this story. Wellington's face was a mask of resignation. Fine, I'll confess. I'll take full responsibility. But I want guarantees that Victoria and Michael won't be prosecuted, won't lose everything, won't be destroyed by my sins. That's not up to us, I said. That's up to the courts, the prosecutors, the legal system. Then what's the point of confessing? The point is telling the truth, Michael said. The point is acknowledging what happened, honoring the memory of the people who died, and facing the consequences of our actions. Wellington looked at his daughter, his face filled with love and regret. Victoria, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the choices I made, for the foundation I built your life on, for the pain this is going to cause you.
Victoria was crying again, but she walked over and hugged her father. "I love you, Dad, but I can't live with this secret. I can't build my marriage on lies." "I know," he whispered. "I know." Michael retrieved his phone and started dialing again. This time, Wellington didn't try to stop him.
District Attorney's Office? This is Michael Patterson. I need to report a crime. A 20-year-old crime involving the deaths of 3 people. As Michael spoke to the prosecutor's office, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized was there. 20 years of guilt, 20 years of shame, 20 years of living with the knowledge that I'd prioritized money over human life. It was finally coming to an end. Victoria and Wellington stood together, holding each other, preparing for the storm that was about to engulf their family. Michael continued his phone conversation, providing details, setting up meetings, beginning the process of seeking justice for 3 people who'd been dead for 20 years. The wedding reception continued inside, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the terrace. Soon, the guests would learn that the celebration was over, that the fairy tale had become a nightmare, that the perfect union of 2 successful families had become a tragedy of guilt and redemption. But for the first time in 20 years, I felt like I could breathe freely. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my son back. And for the first time since Sarah's death, I felt like I might be able to live with myself. The truth was finally coming out, and whatever happened next, we would face it together. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom watching my son testify about his father-in-law's crimes and his own father's complicity in them. The media attention had been intense. The story of a wealthy real estate mogul whose empire was built on the graves of fire victims had captured the public's imagination in the worst possible way. Wellington had kept his word. He'd confessed to everything, taken full responsibility, and painted me as a desperate father coerced into compliance by economic desperation and fear. The prosecutors had been more interested in the wealthy executive than the blue-collar contractor who'd been trying to pay for his wife's cancer treatments. I'd received probation and community service. Wellington received 15 years in prison. Victoria had lost everything: her trust fund, her inheritance, her father's empire. Wellington Properties had collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and criminal investigations. The company's assets were liquidated to pay damages to the victims' families, though no amount of money could truly compensate for their losses. But she'd gained something too. She'd gained the respect of a husband who'd watched her choose integrity over comfort, truth over security. She'd gained the knowledge that her marriage was built on honesty rather than lies. Michael had left his job at Wellington Properties the day after the wedding, before the arrests, before the media storm. He'd taken a position with a small construction company. Ironically, the same type of work I'd done when he was growing up. The pay was a fraction of what he'd made in real estate, but he seemed happier than I'd seen him in years. They'd had to sell their downtown apartment, trade the luxury car for a modest sedan, abandon plans for elaborate vacations and expensive hobbies. But they'd done it together, as a team, supporting each other through the worst crisis of their lives. "Dad?" Michael's voice brought me back to the present. We were walking out of the courthouse after the final sentencing hearing. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and for the first time in 20 years, I actually meant it. "It's over," Victoria said, taking my arm. She'd started calling me Dad about 3 months ago, after her own father had been sentenced. It's finally over. The 3 of us stood on the courthouse steps, facing an uncertain future, but facing it together. The media had moved on to other scandals, other tragedies. The families of the victims had received their settlements and their justice, though I knew that money and legal vindication could never truly heal their wounds. "What now?" Michael asked. "Now we go home," I said. "We have dinner together like we used to when you were a kid. We talk about normal things, the weather, the baseball scores, what's for dessert."
"Sounds perfect," Victoria said, and I could tell she meant it. We walked to Michael's car, a 5-year-old Honda that would have horrified the old Victoria, but seemed to suit the new one just fine. As we drove through the city, I thought about the warehouse that had started it all. It had been demolished years ago, replaced by a memorial garden dedicated to the 3 victims. I'd visited it once, leaving flowers and a letter of apology that no one would ever read. "Dad," Michael said as we pulled into his driveway, "I want to ask you something. Anything. Do you regret it? Do you regret speaking up, even though it cost Victoria her inheritance and destroyed her father?" I thought about the question as we walked into their modest rental house, a far cry from the mansion where they'd planned to live, but warm and comfortable and honest. "I regret that it took me 20 years to find the courage to do the right thing," I said. "I regret that 3 people had to die for my sins and Wellington's greed. I regret the pain this has caused you and Victoria." "But do you regret telling the truth?" I looked at my son and daughter-in-law, at the life they were building together based on honesty and integrity rather than wealth and status. "No," I said, "I don't regret telling the truth." Victoria was in the kitchen, preparing dinner with ingredients from the local grocery store, rather than from expensive specialty markets. Michael was helping her, and they were laughing together about something, a private joke, a shared moment of happiness in the midst of rebuilding their lives. This was what I'd been missing for months: family, connection, the simple pleasure of being with people who loved me despite my flaws and failures. "You know what's funny?" Michael said as we sat down to eat. "I'm happier now than I was 6 months ago." "I'm making less money, living in a smaller place, driving an older car, but I'm happier. Why do you think that is?" I asked. "Because I'm not lying to myself anymore. I'm not pretending that money doesn't matter, that where it comes from doesn't matter, that the choices we make don't have consequences." Victoria nodded. "And because we're building something real together, something that's ours, that we've earned honestly." After dinner, we sat on their small porch, watching the sunset and talking about their plans for the future. Michael was thinking about starting his own construction company, focusing on affordable housing and sustainable building practices. Victoria was considering going back to school to become a social worker. They weren't the same people who'd gotten married 6 months ago in that elaborate cathedral ceremony. They were better people, more grounded, more honest, more aware of what really mattered in life. "Dad," Michael said as the evening wound down, "I'm proud of you." "Proud of me? For what?" "For finding the courage to do the right thing, even when it was hard, even when it cost you everything." "It didn't cost me everything," I said. "It gave me back my son." Victoria squeezed my hand. "It gave us all a chance to start over, to build something real and honest and good." As I drove home that night, I thought about Sarah and what she would have said about everything that had happened. She would have been proud that I'd finally found the courage to tell the truth. She would have been happy to see Michael and me reconnected. She would have loved Victoria for choosing integrity over inheritance. But mostly, she would have been relieved that the weight of secrets and shame that had been crushing me for 20 years was finally gone. The house was quiet when I got home, but it didn't feel empty anymore. My relationship with Michael was stronger than it had been in years. I had a daughter-in-law who had chosen to include me in her life, even after learning about my darkest secrets. I had a future that was uncertain but honest. 3 people had died 20 years ago because of choices Wellington and I had made. Nothing could bring them back. Nothing could undo the pain their families had suffered. But their deaths hadn't been meaningless if they'd led to this moment, to truth, to justice, to redemption. I pulled out a photo of Sarah that I kept on my nightstand. "We did it," I told her. "We raised a good man. A man who chose integrity over comfort, truth over lies, family over fortune." The next morning, I woke up without the crushing weight of guilt that had been my constant companion for 20 years. I made coffee, read the newspaper, and prepared for a day of community service at the local homeless shelter. Part of my sentence, but also part of my penance. At noon, Michael called. "Dad, what are you doing for lunch?" "Nothing special. Why?" "Victoria and I were thinking about trying that new diner downtown. Want to join us?" "I'd love to."
As I drove to meet them, I realized that this was what I'd been fighting for all along, not wealth or status or social position, but simply the chance to have lunch with my family on a Tuesday afternoon, the chance to be included in their lives, to share in their joys and struggles, to be the father and father-in-law they could respect and love. Wellington was in prison, probably contemplating the ruins of his empire and the cost of his greed. Victoria was adapting to a simpler life with grace and determination. Michael was learning that happiness doesn't require wealth, that satisfaction can come from honest work and honest relationships. And I was learning that redemption is possible, even after 20 years of carrying the weight of terrible choices, that family bonds, once tested by truth, can emerge stronger than ever, that some prices are worth paying, no matter how high they seem. The diner was busy, filled with working people on their lunch breaks. Michael and Victoria were already there, sitting in a booth by the window, holding hands and talking quietly. When they saw me, they smiled and waved, making room for me at their table. This was my family. Honest, imperfect, scarred by truth, but strengthened by it. We weren't wealthy anymore. We weren't socially prominent. We weren't the kind of family that got written up in society pages. But we were real. We were honest. We were together. And that was worth more than all of Wellington's blood money put together.